Om Namah Shivaya. A very warm welcome to all. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. A famous saying by Mahatma Gandhi, whose life is a chronicle of valor, truth and sacrifices. Born and raised in a Hindu family in coastal Gujarat, Gandhi trained in law at the Inner Temple in London. After 2 uncertain years in India, where he was unable to start a successful law practice, he moved to South Africa in 1893 to represent an Indian merchant in a lawsuit. In 1915, he returned to his dear motherland, where he set about organizing peasants, farmers and urban labourers to protest against the excessive land tax and discrimination imposed by the British. These movements included the famous Champaran movement and the Khera Satyagraha. For the next 3 decades, Gandhi relentlessly attacked the British not through violence or hate, but through the path of truth and non-violence, until he was finally able to achieve his ultimate dream of gaining independence for India.
British granted independence, but the British Indian Empire was partitioned into 2 main dominions, Hindu majority India and a Muslim majority Pakistan. But Gandhi was disappointed by the partition, as many displaced Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs made their way to their new lands, religions. Violence broke out, especially in the states of Punjab and Bengal. Eschewing the official celebration of independence in Delhi, Gandhi visited the affected areas, attempting to provide solace. In the following, he undertook several fasts unto death to stop religious violence. The last of these, undertaken on 12th January 1948, when he was 78 years old, also had the indirect goal of pursuing India to pay out some cash assets owed to Pakistan. Some Indians thought Gandhi was too accommodating. Among them was Natharam Godse, a Hindu nationalist, who assisted Gandhi on 30th January 1948 by firing 3 bullets into his chest.
In August 1947, the British left India after more than 300 years. British India was partitioned into 2 independent nation states, India and Pakistan. India was to remain secular with a Hindu majority. Pakistan was to have a Muslim majority. This is the story of how 2 countries were carved up in haze. British colonists and how this led to one of the largest human migration in history. An estimated 15 million people were uprooted as Muslims began trekking to East and West Pakistan, while Hindus and Sikhs went the other way. Between 1 and 2 million people lost their lives due to large-scale religious violence, starvation and disease. More than 75,000 women were raped or abducted. But how did this religious hatred spark so much violence? To understand this, we have to look at Britain's rule of India. Tensions between Hindus and Muslims did exist before the British Raj was established, but many Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs also coexisted peacefully. When the British came to rule, they used the now infamous strategy of divide rule. They enforced specific measures like the scientific census in 1871 and the formation of a separate electorate for Muslims, which led to the evolution of rigid religious identities. These identities became more important than language or ethnicity and were used to pit people against one another so that the British could consolidate their own power. Mistrust between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs and Christians began to grow.
Champaran Satyagraha. The Champaran Satyagraha of 1917 was the first Satyagraha movement led by Gandhi in India and is considered a historically important revolt in the Indian independence movement. It was a farmers' uprising that took place in Champaran district of Bihar, India during the British colonial period. The farmers were protesting against having to grow indigo with barely any payment for it. The cause of Champaran Satyagraha rooted in 2 facts. Firstly, the introduction of synthetic dye. The demand of indigo decreased, which led the Samhindas or planters to shed off their burden by increasing the rent burden on the peasants, which added to the existing plights of the peasants. Mahatma Gandhi's first Satyagraha was experimented on the soil of Motihari in the Champaran district and thus Champaran has been the starting point of India's independence movement launched by Gandhi. Buddhist stupa located in Kesaria near Motihari, it is known to be the largest Buddha stupa in the world.
Om Namah Shivaya. As we all know, the road to freedom for India was tough till 1947. Many freedom fighters have lost their life in the name of freedom. Before 1947, the British enacted many laws and acts in order to oppress Indians. Rowlatt Act was one among them. In this video, I am presenting before you the salient features of Rowlatt Act and consequences faced by Indians. Success of Satyagraha movement in Champaran, Kedah and Ahmedabad able to boost morale of the oppressed Indian. Threatened by growth of Satyagraha, the British decided to exert more control over public activities. As a result, they proposed Rowlatt Act in 1919, named after Sir Sidney Rowlatt. Rowlatt Act was aimed to cut out political activities of the country. It equipped the power to detain political prisoners without trial for 2 years. Mahatma Gandhi opposed Rowlatt Act by starting a peaceful satyagraha. It suggested a civil disobedience movement beginning with a hartal on 6 April 1919. It was followed by rallies, strikes by railway workers and closing down of shops. To sum it up, the day-to-day work across the country brought to a grinding halt. The British were threatened this mass movement could break all line of communication in the country. So they decided to suppress the nationalists. As a result, several local leaders were arrested and Mahatma Gandhi was prohibited from entering Delhi. In Amritsar, police opened fire on a peaceful procession. Angered by this brutal action, people attacked bank, post office and railway station. Consequently, martial law was imposed in Amritsar under the command of General Dyer. The event that took place in 13 April 1919 is always remembered most brutal representation of British. Unaware of martial law, several people gathered at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar to attend the Baisakhi festival. To create terror, General Dyer came to the ground with 15 armed soldiers. He blocked all the entry points into the ground without any trial warning, then opened fire into the helpless crowd. The firing stopped only when ammunition ended, killing hundreds of people including women and children. Jallianwala Bagh massacre triggered many protests, strikes and clashes with policemen and attacked government buildings along the India. The British government dealt the process with the iron hand. They humiliated Satyagrahi, ordering them to scrub their nose on the ground and forcing them to salute the British official. Finally, bombing of villages made Mahatma Gandhi to withdraw Satyagraha against Rowlatt Act. Satyagraha against Rowlatt Act was successful, but it did not reach masses in rural area. Mahatma Gandhi needed mass movement that would involve people from all religion community across the country. This paved the way to non-cooperation movement, which was planned by Gandhiji to bring all Indians together to work for single national movement.
Chauri Chaura incident. On 2nd February 1922, people were protesting against high meat prices at the marketplace. They were beaten by the police and many of their leaders were arrested and detained at the Chauri Chaura police station. Volunteers planned another protest against the police. 4th February 1922, supporters of the Khilafat movement and the Indian National Congress clashed with local police. An angry mob subsequently set the local police station on fire, killing 22 Indian policemen who had taken shelter inside.
By 1930, the Congress party had declared the Purna Swaraj or complete independence was to be in the sole aim of freedom struggle. It started observing 26 January as Purna Swaraj that civil disobedience was to achieve it. Mahatma Gandhi was asked to plan and organize for such kind of act. Gandhiji chose to break the salt law in defense of government because tax on salt. In his opinion, was the most oppressive form of tax humankind could devise, since salt was the basic necessity of human existence, just like air and water. The Dandi March commenced on 12th March 1930 from Sabarmati Ashram in Gujarat toward the coastal village of Dandi, which was about 390 km in distance. Gandhiji, along with 79 followers, set out foot towards Dandi. They covered the distance between Sabarmati Ashram and Dandi in 25 days and reached the coast of Dandi on 6th April 1930. By picking up a handful of salt, Gandhi broke the salt laws and mass civil disobedience movement.